The news hit like thunder, leaving millions in disbelief. But for Donnie Swaggart, it wasn't just news, it was personal. When he heard about Charlie Kirk's shocking passing, his reaction was raw, unfiltered, and filled with fire. His voice trembled with both anger and heartbreak as he declared this was more than the loss of a public figure. It was a wake-up call about the bitterness and division tearing our world apart. What he said next left everyone stunned, and it may change the way you see this tragedy forever. From the very beginning, Donnie Swaggart made it clear this was not going to be a calm or carefully measured response. His reaction was raw, emotional, and unapologetic. To him, Charlie's death wasn't just about one man, it was a wake-up call, a mirror reflecting back at society, forcing everyone to confront how far things have truly fallen. To really understand Donnie's words, you have to know the complex history between him and Charlie Kirk. They weren't lifelong friends, but their paths crossed often, sometimes in public debates, other times in heated cultural discussions. Donnie, famous for his fiery sermons and bold convictions, occasionally admired Charlie's courage to speak out on political and cultural issues. Yet, at the same time, he often felt Charlie's tone was too sharp, too divisive, and not always anchored in the same spiritual foundation that guided his own life. Still, beneath the disagreements, there was an unspoken respect. Donnie admitted more than once that whether he agreed with Charlie or not, he recognized the passion that drove him. And that's what makes his response to Charlie's passing so much more than just words. It's a heartfelt declaration, born out of respect, pain, and a call for deeper reflection. He admired the bravery required to speak his mind in front of the world. The news of Charlie's passing was even more devastating because of this respect. It was more than just losing a political pundit for Donnie. It was the abrupt passing of a voice that had sparked discussions, questioned established structures, and made millions of people feel both love and rage. Donnie's response was much more than just a public declaration because of the weight of their shared past. It was intimate, filled with recollections of arguments, compromises, and the tacit recognition that they were both battling for the truth as they understood it. Upon receiving the news that Charlie Kirk had died, Donnie Swaggart's initial reaction was a flurry of emotions. He didn't conceal himself with rehearsed lines or cautious language. Rather, he spoke with an unvarnished honesty that many found shocking. As he stated that this was not just a personal tragedy, but also a national one, his voice wavered with indignation and sorrow. Even though he and Charlie did not always agree, Donnie acknowledged that he respected Charlie's courage for some reason. Donnie compared losing him to losing a fighter in a conflict when far too many people are already mute. He said that Charlie's passing was a devastating blow to everyone who knew him, even the innumerable people who either fervently supported him or fiercely opposed him. This man was not perfect, Donnie cried out, but he was there. He stood, which is more than most people can say. It was evident from the rage and sadness in his statements that his loss was intertwined with annoyance at the society, the differences, and the hatred that surrounded them all. Donnie's remarks swiftly changed from anguish to indignation as his feelings spilled forth. Charlie Kirk was not the only person he mourned. He criticized the very society that he believed had played a role in this situation. Donnie spoke in a furious tone about how people were now separated and how respect and compassion had been replaced by rage and animosity. He placed the blame on the never-ending barrage of media criticism, the never-ending desire for controversy, and the toxic political climate that seemed to thrive on dividing rather than uniting people. Donnie stated that Charlie's passing ought to be a wake-up call, a reminder that the world's fixation on war had detrimental and actual repercussions. He wondered how a society could honor free speech while stifling those who dared to exercise it. His remarks lacked tact and tact. They went straight to the source of the issue and were cutting and incisive. "This is what happens," he stated firmly, "when we prioritize winning an argument over saving a soul and when hate overrides the truth." Charlie's death meant more to Donnie than simply losing a man. It was about facing the gloomy image of a fractured society that had let rage become its compass. Donnie Swaggart's voice softened when he vented his rage at society, and he briefly looked inward. He talked about his own experience, the difficulties he had encountered as a public figure, and the innumerable instances in which he had been misinterpreted and abused. Donnie acknowledged that he could identify with Charlie Kirk's experience in many respects. The relentless pressure to live up to people's expectations while being severely criticized for every choice and statement, the taunting, and the criticism. He related tales of evenings when he felt as though the entire world was resting on his shoulders. When it felt difficult to bear the weight of the criticism, he added softly, "I understand what it's like to feel the stain of rejection, to have people cheer for your downfall, and yet to get up and tell it like it is." His goal in reflecting was to create a connection between his experiences and Charlie's, not to attract attention to himself. Donnie reminded everyone that there were actual people with hearts that might burst and souls that could get weary behind the audacious statements and public platforms. By expressing his own suffering, he humanized Charlie's passing and demonstrated that it goes beyond politics and controversy. Few people could completely comprehend the responsibilities that this man, like himself, had carried. Donnie's tone became more acerbic as he went on, this time focusing specifically on the hypocrisy he perceived around Charlie's passing. Speaking out, he criticized those who had openly attacked Charlie for years, ridiculed his beliefs, and questioned his character before abruptly expressing grief and sympathy now that he was no longer with them. This was exposed by Donnie as a theatrical show of worry, words without substance from those who had not been respectful when it really counted. After a tragedy, it's easy to cry, Donnie added. However, what about the deference that ought to have been accorded to him during his lifetime? What about the support he received when fending off the attacks? You now act as like you are grieving for him. His remarks resonated because they revealed an unvarnished reality that many people were too courteous to acknowledge. Donnie reminded his audience that how one treats someone while they are still alive is a better indicator of life than what is said at their death. His response gained a dramatic edge from this moment of exposing hypocrisy, demonstrating that he was more than just grieving. He was pointing the finger at everyone who seemed to care but didn't show it when it mattered. Donnie Swaggart transitioned to a more profound, spiritual viewpoint amid his rage and criticism. He reminded everyone that only God could bring about a greater justice that went beyond politics, the media, and public opinion. Donnie discussed faith, the afterlife, and the conviction that Charlie Kirk's spirit had departed to a realm outside of human comprehension. According to him, God was the only one who truly knew the truth and could judge a person's heart, deeds, and intentions, even when the world would misinterpret or attack them in life. According to Donnie, we live in a society that conflates celebrity with worth and controversy with bravery. However, every life has significance beyond the news, and every soul matters in God's eyes. He urged his audience to examine their own lives, to be less critical of others, and to concentrate on the things that endure, such as honesty, love, and faith. This spiritual viewpoint added depth and lessened the severity of his earlier remarks, demonstrating that his response was about finding purpose, closure, and hope in an apparently hopeless and overwhelming circumstance rather than just responding to public criticism. The audience's response to Donnie Swaggart's remarks was swift and forceful. People weighed in on public forums and social media. While some condemned him for being overly critical during a tragic event, others praised his courage and honesty. Supporters of Donnie appreciated his courage to confront hypocrisy and educate everyone of the deeper spiritual lessons in Charlie Kirk's death by speaking up against the grain. In a society that is frequently dominated by stage mourning and shallow sympathy, they see him as a voice of reason. However, detractors claim that Donnie's remarks appeared to blend judgment with grief, transforming a somber occasion into a stage for conflict. But Donnie remained unfazed, knowing that when he spoke the truth as he saw it, there would always be conflicting replies. He admitted that he and many others had to deal with a split response on a regular basis. Being in the spotlight meant that people would analyze, discuss, and contest what you said, but he felt that the discussion he had started was essential. The mixture of praise and criticism only served to emphasize how profoundly Charlie's passing affected individuals and how much it made society reevaluate its principles, conduct, and readiness to confront difficult realities. Donnie Swaggart came to a pivotal moment in his answer following the storm of rage, criticism, and introspection. He understood that even if his remarks had been incisive and unvarnished, his ultimate objective was to raise awareness and promote healing rather than to criticize or place blame. Even though Charlie's death was heartbreaking, Donnie saw that it provided a chance to stop, think, and come together behind the principles that are most important: honesty, morality, and compassion. He reminded the audience that if it led to growth, confrontation could do just that.